Second episode of Down on the Farm. I'm James Blundell, coming to you loud and proud from the place I call home. Thank you to all of you for your positive posts and comments on our first episode with the beautiful Sarah Storer. Click on the red button to subscribe to the YouTube Punktured Media channel. Today's guest is Auckland born and raised. He's been likened to Leonard Cohen, Tom Waits, and Nick Cave. Since his award-winning debut album Wayward Son in 1984, he's produced a body of work remarkable for its ability to capture time, place, and landscape, both internal and external. His songs arise from a finely honed observation of life, love, and loss. He's regarded as one of New Zealand's finest singer-songwriters, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to WAYNE Gillespie. Wayne, welcome to Down on the Farm.
Thanks, James. It's great to be here. Nice to be on your show. Thank you.
But just for an outline for people who are watching from ground zero, born and raised in Auckland, I've only travelled there a couple. What was it like? What was Auckland like to grow up in?
I had a great life in Auckland, and I'm a city boy, so I'm not from the country. I was in the middle of Auckland. My father was a semi-pro jazz musician, so we had music in the house all the time, and I was mad on sport, tennis in particularly, so I just spent most of my life on a tennis court.
Can you remember the first song that you walked back from or sat back from going, I actually think that's not bad, I can live with that?
Because I didn't get an instrument till I was 17, but I was getting song ideas floating through my head. So I didn't have much choice about that. I did remember writing something like, I'd rather be a swallow than a snail about the age of 14, and thinking, God, that's fantastic. And it had a beautiful rhythm, a beautiful melody. And then I heard Simon and Garfunkel's "El Conde Pasa" on the radio, and I go, oh my God, it's the same melody. And for one brief moment, I was thinking of suing them, but then I realized I'd obviously picked it up on the radio before them. Yeah.
One of the questions I ask everybody, and we have a very, very broad base of interviewee, there is a song, I'm aware of it because it came up pre-going to air, that really, really made you stop and think. And I don't want to... You tell us which one it was and why it really affected you.
I remember this very well. I was listening to Radio National New Zealand, which is equivalent to the ABC here, and they have a folk program. So I'm already completely obsessed with music at that point, although I'm never thinking, I've got a jazz musician father, and my sister was a clarinet teacher at that point. So I was the sporty one, So, and I heard them play Leonard Cohen's "Bird on a Wire," and actually another song off that same album, You Know Who I Am. And it just changed my life. I mean, that moment, it was like being hit by electricity, because I'd been writing a little bit of poetry up until then, and then I heard this amalgamation of poetry and music together, and it was just a light bulb moment. And with a guy who couldn't sing that well and wasn't Eric Clapton on guitar, and I kind of thought, maybe I can do that. I didn't sing that well, but I love words, and maybe that's possible. Where listening to the Beatles, I didn't even know any other musicians. That was way outside of, that was a fantasy realm for me. But this kind of bedroom poet with a guitar, definitely, it was a light bulb moment. Absolutely. I'd made that Wayward Son indie album, recorded a couple of $1,000, pressed them all myself, and ended up winning an APRA songwriting award and being nominated for best most promising male vocalist, I think, and best folk album. And so then CBS got interested, and we started talking to producers. I knew Trevor Lucas. I was a great fan of Sandy Denny. I knew he'd, produced her albums. I was a great fan. Goanna and Red Gun too had hits. He was only 19, solid rock, and I was coming from a folk background. So for me, he was the ideal person, within reach.
When you recorded New Locations with Trevor Lucas, the experience became new locations became dislocation.
It was dislocation because I moved to Byron Bay and the music farm in Mullumbimby. Hadn't to work with musicians I'd never met before, and Trevor I didn't really know either. I'd never played with the rhythm section before, so I couldn't keep time. So, there was a lot of challenges. My band didn't have a drummer, so so in the intro, took the guitar off me and says, you know, you can't be playing on this. Trevor, I thought, would be this kind of sensitive, introverted soul who, you know, obviously a great encourager of other introverted, sensitive soul songwriters, you know, like Sandy Denny and so forth. And of course, and I don't know if you've met him or come across him, but he's an ocker, true, you know, bigger than life personality, and you know, just a real ocker. And as a sort of fairly quiet New Zealander at that point, I remember having to get up on the standing on the mixing desk, jumping up and down, saying, no, the vocals have got to be louder or something like that. So, but that was really good for me. He had a solid sense of direction of what to do. He knew where he was going with it. You know, I certainly had to do more than put my hand up to be heard, but he knew what he was doing, and to work with someone of his caliber and pedigree was amazing. And we became, you know, we became really good mates, and a lot of respect. It was really sad. We were talking about doing the third album together a week before he passed away, actually. So, you know, it was a great loss. And
that then takes us to the part that I think is truly remarkable about you, is that you're a practicing psychologist.
When I came to Australia, I mean, I was still pretty intent that with a dream that maybe I'd be able to earn a living as a songwriter. And I think it became pretty apparent after the third album that wasn't going to happen. And then I just went back. I went to university, Macquarie University in Sydney, and just did a couple of units in psychology, really just as out of interest. I wasn't planning to turn it into a career at that point, but I got so fascinated with it that I just kept going. And I got a book that I saw called The Personality of Musicians, and the musical temperament of musicians, I think it was, written by an English guy about classical musicians. And I thought, wow, now that's what are rock musicians like? What are contemporary musicians like? And that just gave me an excuse to hang out in bars and interview musicians essentially for a year, trying to write a paper about the personality of rock musicians. You know, so I finally found a way of combining the two together, which made sense for me, I suppose. And in some ways, my work as a psychologist now, you know, percentage of my practice is working with people in the entertainment or creative industries, which is, you know, nice kind of dovetail of those two things.
I actually think it should be a prerequisite. All long-term musicians, and particularly creatives that are doing the writing as well as the performing, should undergo reasonably consistent therapy. And do you see literally in some long-term musicians a type of PTSD which has to take into account living on the breadline, maybe some outrageous success, then having to adjust to the fact that that's not permanent? I mean, there are a lot of things go into particularly into a long-term career that are hard mentally.
Yeah, James, I think you've summed up beautifully, like some of the challenges of being in the creative, being a creative person or trying to make a living at it. And it's pretty much that life cycle, isn't it? And so, yeah, for 12 years, I worked at NIDA as a counselling psychologist there, and that was great to get people at the beginning of their careers and assist with those areas of confidence and stage fright and all the other stuff they have to deal with as a creative person, as well as stuff we all have to deal with, you know, family and things we can't control happening while we're going through it. And then, of course, there's the other end of the cycle where, as you say, people you know, get promises of success or they experience success, but there's that, you know, like post-touring or post-success blues, if you like, because you kind of realize it's sort of transient. It doesn't necessarily change your life the way you think it's going to, and income and insecurity of jobs and uncertainty. All those things kind of mean that the studies show that creative people are more prone to anxiety, depression. They're more, interestingly, they're more self-conscious, you know, which people don't expect that a performer is going to be self-conscious, but it goes with the territory. And that ego you talk about, I think there's a fragility to that, isn't there? Because there's someone else who does it better than me, and you know, good days and bad days. There's a real fragility. I think you need that ego. You need it to have some self-belief, absolutely, but it can be easily knocked. And so, and then of course, yeah, people that have been, you know, bands that have broken up after big success, and how to transition a bit like I did, I suppose. Do I keep plugging away at that, or do I find something else I can do that provides a bit of stability and still find a way of staying connected to my art? You know, there's a lot of challenges there.
I think two of my favourites are Rudyard Kipling's "If you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same," and the other one of Elton John's is "Fame is the price you pay."
Yeah, I think it is really important, and I totally agree with you that everyone should have access to, you know, that preparation for an artistic career and get the skills, the coping skills. You know, the other thing that saying is, you are not your work. You know, how do you recognize your identity? You still have worth and value outside of the last song you wrote, or, you know, I think that's really hard for artists. We tend to identify our worth as being our work, you know. That takes a long time, I think, to understand, and it's such a rocky road. I think that it should be mandatory. And I think, you know, Support Act, for example, now music industry that is accessible actually to all people in creative arts now, a free telephone counselling service and referral service is a great step forward for supporting people in the entertainment business. And it's a recognition of what we've known for 30 years, that people in those creative industries, particularly with COVID, you know, need that psychological support.
The next question is so much more than the standard end of interview question, because there's so much to it. What is next for you? Do you have a structured line of what you'd like to do with your psychology, or, as you alluded to before, is it a combination of music and psychology?
For me, because I've been identifying as a songwriter since I was the age of 14, I still feel that's my identity, which is kind of weird. And I feel that although I've been a psychologist for 20 years, that's still something I do that's kind of neat, but it's not really who I am, you know. I'd rather talk about songwriting and music if I'm at a party any day. And so I'm hoping to get back and do some more songwriting, perhaps co-writing with people, because that's probably a bit easier to, you know, I've had a bit of a hiatus. Make some more albums. I'd love to see, you know, a few more people. I'd love to think that the music could live on by other people, maybe grabbing hold of one or two songs and things for longevity. You know, I mean, as a songwriter, for me, I mean, you've got a magnificent voice. I wasn't blessed in that way, and for me, having to sing your own songs and record them was always kind of a means of someone hearing them, and maybe someone else who could, you know, really had a voice or was a great performer, you know, might kind of latch on to something. So for me, it's getting back out there. I've got a new album that we've worked on for years and years, coming out next year, under a moniker, I think, Wayne Gillespie and Famous Blue Raincoat.
I really, really wish you all the best, and I can't wait to hear what Blue Raincoats. I can't wait to hear that. But also, you know, you're a long way from finished with your writing yet. It's patently obvious.
Oh, thank you, James. I really appreciate being on your show. It's just a big thrill for me to be part of this. You got some great artists on this, and to be included is magnificent. Yeah, I hope I can deliver your hope for more songs. Yeah, I certainly feel there's more there to come and a way to tap into them. And it's just been a real pleasure to be on the show with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne, and thank you to our wonderful sponsors, Aussie Legends Hemp, Stylish Outback Clothing, and the Granite Belt Brewery. Click on the red button to subscribe to the YouTube Punktured Media channel. This is James Blundell signing out, and I'll see you next time for another episode of Down on the Farm.